Good morning. Thank you for joining me in this morning mindfulness practice. Let's get settled in. Turn off other distractions. Just allow yourself to be. Most of the time, we're pushing and striving and struggling and trying to make things happen. But sometimes we're pushing in the wrong direction and we're actually making our problems bigger. Allow your body to relax, your central nervous system to calm down, to get grounded, to start the day in calmness. Everything becomes easier when you can remain calm under pressure. And you can remind yourself that you are a divine spirit. You're living in a physical body. You are connected to divine energy, and the divine has created you perfectly. Just think about that for a moment. You were created perfectly. Society has told us we're not enough, but that's not true. You want to stop saying that to yourself. You want to have some empowering messages that everything is always working out for you. The challenges that you're going through aren't meant to stop you or to keep you playing small. They are to build up your strength. Just like when you go to the gym and build up your muscles, you don't do it once. You do it over and over and over until all of a sudden you are strong and healthy. It seems it's when you're in it that it's never happening. And then one day people notice the change. But if you don't go to the gym, you get flabby and soft. Well, I want you to understand that every day when you take the time to connect to source energy, to remind yourself that you are perfect, you are a divine spirit, everything is always working out for you, then you can more easily overcome the challenges that you're going through. I want to read an essay to you. The chapter called Yourself from The Hidden Power by Thomas Troward. And he says, I want to talk to you about the livingness there is in being yourself. It has at least the merit of simplicity, for it must surely be easier to be oneself than to be something or somebody else. Yet that is what so many are constantly trying to do. The self that is their own is not good enough for them, and so they're always trying to go one better than what God has made them, with endless strain and struggle as the consequence. Of course, they are right to put before them an ideal infinitely grander than anything they have yet attained. The only possible way of progress is by following an ideal that is always a stage ahead of us. But the mistake is in not seeing that its attainment is a matter of growth, and that growth must be the expansion of something that already exists in us, and therefore implies our being what we are and what and where we are as its starting point. This growth is a continual process, and we cannot do next month's growth without first doing this month's, but we are always wanting to jump into some ideal of the future, not seeing that we can only reach it by steadily going on from where we are now. These considerations should make us more confident and more comfortable. We are employing a force which is much greater than we believe ourselves to be, yet it is not separate from us, not needing to be persuaded or compelled or inveigled into doing what we want. It is the substratum of our own being, which is continually passing up into manifestation on the visible plane and becoming that personal self to which we often limit our attention without considering whence it proceeds. But in truth, the outer self is the surface growth of that individuality which lies concealed far down in the deeps below, and which is none other than the spirit of life, which underlies all forms of manifestation. Endeavor to realize that this spirit must be in itself, that is to say, apart from any of the conditions that arise from the various relations which necessarily establish themselves between its various forms of individualization. In its homogeneous self, what else can it be but pure life, essence of life, if you like to call it? Then realize that as essence of life, it exists in the innermost of every one of its forms of manifestation in as perfect simplicity as any we can contribute to it in our most abstract conceptions. In this light, we see it to be the eternally self-generating power which, to express itself, flows into form. This universal essence of life is a continual becoming into form. And since we are a part of nature, we do not need to go further than ourselves to find the life-giving energy at work with all its powers. Hence, all we have to do is allow it to rise to the surface. We do not have to make it rise any more than the engineer who sinks the bore pipe for an artesian well has to make the water rise in it. The water does that by its own energy, springing as a fountain 100 feet into the air. Just so we shall find a fountain of essence of life ready to spring up in ourselves, inexhaustible and continually increasing in its flow, as one taught long ago to a woman at a wayside well. This upspringing of life essence is not another's, it is our own. It does not require deep studies, hard labors, weary journeyings to attain it. It is not the monopoly of this teacher or that writer whose lectures we must attend or whose books we must read to get it. It is the innermost of ourselves. And a little common sense thought as to how anything comes to be anything will soon convince us that the great inexhaustible life must be the very root and substance of us, permeating every fiber of our being. Surely to be this vast infinitude of living power must be enough to satisfy all our desires. And yet, this wonderful ideal is nothing else but what we already are in principio. It is all there in ourselves now, only awaiting our recognition for its manifestation. It is not the essence of life which has to grow, for that is eternally perfect in itself, but it is our recognition of it that has to grow. And this growth cannot be forced. It must come by a natural process, the first necessity of which is to abstain from all straining after being something which at the time we cannot naturally be. The law of our evolution has put us in possession of certain powers and opportunities, and our further development depends on our doing just what these powers and opportunities make it possible for us to do here and now. If we do what we are able to do today, it will open the way for us to do something better tomorrow. And in this manner, the growing process will proceed healthily and happily in a rapidly increasing ratio. This is so much easier than striving to compel things to be what they are not. And it is also so much more fruitful in good results. It is not sitting still doing nothing, and there is plenty of room for the exercise of all our mental faculties. But these faculties are themselves the outcome of the essence of life, and are not the creating power, but only that which gives direction to it. Now it is this moving power at the back of the various faculties that is the true innermost self. And if we realize the identity between the innermost and the outermost, we shall see that we therefore have at our present disposal all that is necessary for our unlimited development in the future. Thus, our livingness consists simply in being ourselves, only more so. And in recognizing this, we get rid of a great burden of unnecessary straining and striving, and the place of the old strum and drang will be taken not by inertia, but by a joyous activity which knows that it always has the requisite power to manifest itself in forms of good and beauty. What matters it whither this leads us? If we are following the line of the beautiful and good, then we shall produce the beautiful and good, and thus bring increasing joy into the world, whatever particular form it may assume. We limit ourselves when we try to fix accurately beforehand the particular form of good that we shall produce. We should aim not so much at having or making some particular thing as at expressing all that we are. The expressing will grow out of realizing the treasures that are ours already, and contemplating the beauty, the affirmative side of all we are now, apart from the negative conceptions and detractions which veil this positive good from us. When we do this, we shall be astonished to see what possibilities reside in ourselves as we are and with our present surroundings, all as unlovely as we may deem them, and commencing to work at once upon whatever we find of affirmative in these, and withdrawing our thought from what we have hitherto seen of negative in them, the right road will open up before us, leading us in wonderful ways to the development of powers that we never suspected and the enjoyment of happiness that we never anticipated. We have never been out of our right path, only we have been walking in it backwards instead of forwards. And now that we have begun to follow the path in the right direction, we find that it is none other than the way of peace, the path of joy, and the road to eternal life. These things we may attain by simply living naturally with ourselves. It is because we are trying to be or do something which is not natural to us that we experience weariness and labor, where we should find all our activities joyously concentrated on objects which lead to their own accomplishment by the force of the love that we have for them. But when we make the grand discovery of how to live naturally, we shall find it to be all and more than all that we had ever desired, and our daily life will become a perpetual joy to ourselves, and we shall radiate light and life wherever we go. Thomas Troward is telling you to be yourself. Now, being yourself, being your authentic self in a world that tells you to be more, to be different, to be this or that. When you sit quietly and tap into divine energy, connect to your heart, there will be desires that you have. And that's why you're here, to experience more life, to experience this world. How will you know what happiness feels like unless you've experienced sorrow? How will you know what you love unless you know what you don't want? But when we focus on what we don't want, and when we focus on the horrible, ugly, monstrous things that are going on, that brings down our energy and it makes us feel terrible. When you know what you don't want, don't give it any more energy. When you allow yourself to sit quietly every morning and every night, knowing what you deeply desire and taking the time to get clear on what you want, get clear on what it would feel like. And you might say, I don't know what it would feel like, but you know you want the opposite of what you don't want. You know what you don't want feels like. So what would the opposite be like? What would it be like to be healthy, to be happy, to be joyful, to be in harmony with the good that you desire? We could get so wrapped up in the outside world that we can forget where we're going, what we want. We can get so wrapped up in the outside, the current reality, the current results, what's going on the news, on TV, in the economy, on the job, in the traffic. When you allow yourself the time every morning to tap into your beautiful dream goals that may be fantasy right now, but they're only fantasy because they haven't been brought into physical reality. Physical reality is the last stage. Everything starts in your mind. Everything starts with an idea. When you get an idea, this is what I want. This is where I'm going. This would be so awesome. Well, most of the time, we tend to talk ourselves out of it. We believe old stories, we believe the past experiences. Our brains have been wired for survival. So, in order to get what you truly desire, you have to rewire the neural networks in your brain. You have to create a new path. And that takes repetition, that takes concentration, that takes going over that path over and over and over. One of the most powerful things you can do is to decide something that you know would bring you pleasure, that you desire more than anything else. Not just physical pleasure, not just mental pleasure, not just spiritual pleasure, but a way of being, a way of having something you truly want. Not the absence of it, not I need more money so I can pay the bills so I can get out of poverty, but what would it be like to have enough time and money to not worry where my next meal is coming from? How am I going to pay the bills? But to enjoy the abundance of life and feel so connected to infinite that what you want just naturally shows up in your life. It just becomes part of your experience because you've experienced it so often in your mind and in your heart that it's a natural progression of what you want. There is something that you deeply desire. Write it down and write down if you received your goal today, if you attained it, if you accomplished it, if you found your purpose and were living the life that you would absolutely love, how would you be feeling? What would you be talking about? You would not be talking about how terrible your job is, how horrible your coworkers are. They're going to get theirs. You would just be enjoying your life. What would that feel like? To be healthy, to be happy, to feel so good you want to skip down the street, not feeling guilty, but just enjoying life. And when you enjoy life, that allows you to uplift others. When you have all the money you need, then you can help lift others out of poverty and misery. It starts inside of you, and it starts with getting clear on what you want and not pushing it away by thinking it's too big, it's too much, I can't have it. Look at me, look where I am, look at my past. The past is past. You were created perfectly. You were created to be the person that you are and developing more and more and more every day. You are a spiritual entity walking around in a physical body. The body is only the container. You are part of this divine universe, and the universe is always for expansion and fuller expression. You are here to experience life. What seemed in the past to have crushed you was only there to help you grow and become stronger and know what you do want. Don't focus on what you don't want. Don't focus on how bad things were. Write down what you want, because if you have an idea of what you want, that is meant for you. You wouldn't have the idea unless it was meant for you. It's becoming part of you. You're no longer a baby. You're no longer a toddler. You're no longer a teenager. You've grown and changed and become the person that you are now, and you're still growing and changing and becoming. Allow that to happen. Let yourself be the best version of you. Write down what you want in the present tense as if it's already here. I am so happy and grateful now that. And as you be yourself, as you be the perfect divine being that you are created to be, remind yourself who you are, where you're going. You are perfectly created. Create a wonderful day. The more you enjoy your life, the more you attract what you want. The more filled with love and spiritual divine blessings, the more you can uncover that perfection within you, the more you attract everything necessary to become who you are meant to be. Be yourself. Feel that divine connection. Enjoy your day, and I'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 7. Thank you.